Is that a throne made of swords? Something about that feels familiar. Ladies, gentlemen, and arisen of all ages, it's time! It's very much a big day in the world of Dragons Dogma 2. Not only have we had a 15-minute showcase from Capcom themselves, but as part of this we had new gameplay, new story information, a whole new vocation revealed, and probably most importantly to most people, a release date for the game, which, I know you want to know that right away, is now officially March 22nd of next year. Yes, that is very soon, only 4 more months to wait, and it looks like it is going to be an absolutely incredible time to play. That said, I'm going to break down everything we saw in this 15-minute showcase so that you can stay caught up on all other new things that we learned about today. Of course, the release date is a really super important thing that you probably wanted to know right away, and well, of course, there is one other really big thing that I can't really wait to talk about any longer, which is the reveal of a brand new vocation, the Trickster. This thing looks right up my alley, exactly like the type of thing that I would love to play unless they happen to announce something even more my style before release. But this is super cool. Essentially, it's a new magical vocation that uses smoke to create illusions, whipping around a sensor like it's a flail with some really swanky animations, and from what the developers told us here about it, this vocation's main role is essentially support. You can create illusions for your enemies to attack without hurting any of your actual living friends. You can create smoke that buffs your pawns as they fight for you. And hell, we even see like a drake that is created out of mist doing an attack for a moment that looks sick as all hell, and I personally am a massive fan of how this is looking from the brief look that we got of it, especially as the devs themselves mentioned that the main idea of this vocation is messing around with the AI, using your pawns to fight, creating obstacles for your enemies to actually have to work through. And with how much they've talked about how improved the AI is in this game, I think the idea of a vocation that sort of just focuses on abusing that could be some really fun addition to the game. Past that, we've got some very important information about the story as a whole, which actually clears up quite a bit. In previous videos where we've talked about this game and the early footage that we've seen of it, there has been quite a lot of questions about how this actually continues from the first game. It's clearly in the same setting, but the original had quite a number of different endings, and in theory, creating a sequel to this requires choosing one to be properly canon and then build off of it. But they've actually done something else entirely here, and the developers themselves stated today that this game actually takes place in a parallel world to the same game, encompassing the same setting, the same rules of it, but none of the things that we experienced actually happened here, which in a way lets you enjoy some familiarity of something that you recognize, while also changing up the whole experience, giving you a whole different breadth of context. And honestly, based on some of the themes from some of the endings in the original game, I could even see it being brought up in the story that these parallel worlds exist. But that could open up a whole other can of worms in itself. The important takeaway here is just to know that we will essentially be in the same setting conceptually as the first game, our familiar dragon friend, all of the arisen and lore around them, the same ideas, but with none of the events from the previous game transpiring before this, and essentially just different characters being involved throughout. New places, all that good stuff. We also got some specifics on other parts of this. Vermund is the kingdom of the humans, whose ruler is a false arisen propped up by the former queen, and for some unknown reason, there is actually pawns who follow this false arisen, even though normally pawns know who an arisen actually is, and it's almost certainly related to the giant glowing necklace or amulet that he's wearing if I had to guess, but of course that will be part of the mystery that we uncover through playing the game and engaging with these things. On the other side of things, there is the nation of Batal, where the lion furries live, and they live quite a different life in a different kind of society, with their empress and their culture in general believing that pawns are a source of suffering, a blight upon their world. This creates an interesting sort of dichotomy that should prove to create a very interesting story from varying perspectives. After that, we had some footage of a specific quest that you will go on to meet a couple of elven brothers and, well, befriend them. And of course, as elves, they actually speak their own language, which you, as, well, not an elf, simply will not understand. For the sake of this quest, one of the NPCs offers to interpret for you, which simply gives you translated subtitles. It's pretty cool. However, outside of this quest, you won't be able to understand elves unless you have a pawn with the woodland wordsmith specialization specifically, which actually just allows them to create these translated subtitles for you. This is quite the in-depth mechanic here that I really do appreciate. I bet you there will be a number more languages like this that you will only be able to understand in these specific situations, and of course, this is just one of a number of specializations that these pawns can have, which means there will be quite a number of good reasons to have a smattering of different pawns at your disposal. On that subject, we actually got a brief look at the character customization, both for your main character themselves and for the pawns too, and this thing looks just detailed as all hell. I love it. It is exactly the kind of thing that you want to see from an RPG. Slide sliders at the wazoo, things like adjusting the tilt of a specific section of your face. It gets that detailed. And they also have a cool feature where if you get something close to what you want, you can actually look at randomized presets that resemble your current sliders, which allows you to really dive in and find what you actually want these characters to look like with the assistance of the game's actual randomized character creator. And hey, it might even show you something that you wouldn't have even thought of doing on your own, which is quite an awesome system, I think, especially when it comes to something like pawns and letting you create distinct but good-looking unique variations of them. Then past this, we had 3 new monsters and parts of their fights, and they all just look great, honestly. The first one, and the main one that they showed off, was the giant Talos, some sort of stone construct that wanders in from the sea trying to attack a city, and this looks dramatic as all hell. They even have like preset mounted ballistas that are very reminiscent of a Monster Hunter Siege fight to me, and of course the main goal is to destroy all the creepy glowing crystals on the thing, as those are the only places that it will actually take damage. And you can do that either with ranged attacks, or by jumping onto it and grabbing the creature, climbing around it, Shadow of the Colossus style, looking for the weak spots and plunging your sword into it. Like this specific encounter with the climbing mechanic actually feels extremely Shadow of the Colossus to me. Like obviously there is climbing in Dragons Dogma, there was climbing in the first game, but this specifically is very reminiscent, and I don't mean that in a bad way by any means. It just sets up this epic feeling of climbing something indescribably large, having to find its weak spots so that you can exploit them, as that's the only way you could ever actually deal with it. It looks great, extremely cinematic, and it'll definitely be fun to experience this fight properly where it belongs in the story. After that, we had 2 more minor creatures, by which I mean rather than being a specific story encounter like the Talos, these will be creatures that you will fight a bit more commonly around the world, and the first one of these is the Drake, which is essentially like a minor dragon. Of course, it fits in the world, and it just feels very at home in this fantasy setting to watch people just fighting a creature like this. It lines up. The fire breath attack that it does looks absolutely fantastic, and the creature itself is very good looking too. And we also got to see some warrior vocation gameplay during this section. It looks very smooth, just fun, big, two-handed sword slicing and dicing while climbing on top of the thing too. Then we had the Dullahan, which is a ghastly headless set of armor holding its own head in one hand and a khopesh in the other, which it seems like it uses its head almost like a casting focus to use spirit magic. It's very cool looking as an encounter, very creepy. I love the whole vibe of it, and it just feels like it has a real weight to its attacks and a real uniqueness compared to a lot of the other monsters that are in the game. Here during this, you can also see some sorcerer vocation gameplay, and they end the clip off by summoning a meteor, so we get a nice example of what the spell looks like in the updated visuals of this game. Then to end things off, as we got our release date for the game today of March 22nd, this also comes with the opening up of pre-orders for the game wherever you buy your video games. And along with the standard edition, we know that there is also going to be a deluxe edition that comes with an aesthetic upgraded camping kit, some rift crystals, as well as a music and sound collection and some in-game items too that we don't really know the details of, but you can see them here. On top of that, there is a pre-order bonus of extra weapons for the 4 standard vocations, and a secondary pre-order bonus only for the deluxe edition, which is this fancy elvish ring that looks a bit too familiar in a sort of precious way. And that pretty much does it then, everyone. Just a breakdown and roundup of the lovely showcase that Capcom gave us tonight for Dragons Dogma 2. So we got a release date that honestly is right around the corner as far as game development time goes, at least. We got footage of a brand new vocation that looks extremely cool and unique, my favorite one so far personally. We got important information leading up to the story of the game itself, giving us some context of the world to help us be ready to navigate it a bit better. Then we also got some footage of 3 new monsters, which all look pretty awesome. Every time they release more footage for this game, my hype for it just grows. March isn't that far away, but it honestly cannot come sooner. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.